Hello, I'm Tootbus. Welcome to the Net Hero podcast, the podcast about net zero. People, places, the things that are going on to change our world. But before we get on to this week's episode, two things to mention. One, our brand new website, futurenetzero.com. Go to it. It's got the tools to help you, particularly our learning and index sections that will really help you get to understand technologies that will help you get to cutting your emissions today. There's plenty more on that platform, including obviously the podcast and lots of great advice and inspiring stories. And the second thing is a date for your diary. The Big Zero Show is back, bigger and better than ever before. July the 2nd and 3rd at the Coventry Business Arena. Day 1 is all about business, 5 years on from the Net Zero Declaration, and Day 2 is about skills and how young people and older people can reskill. Giving back on Day 2, making business on Day 1. It's all part of what we're trying to produce here at Future Net Zero. Now, on to this week's Net Hero podcast. Well, in this episode, I thought I'd bring the podcast on the road. And what better way to get on the road than in a low emission, or in this case, an EV tourist bus. I'm on board something called Tootbus. And Tootbus has got a mission to try and change tourism to be more sustainable. Joining me on this podcast is Gavin Brookin, who's the MD. Gavin, hello.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice.
Thank you for coming on our
thanks
podcast.
very much for telling us. So, right, everyone's probably been or seen one of these kind of tourist buses. Thankfully today it's sunny, but normally it's always pissing down in London.
It is indeed.
But they're very popular, and they're one of the ways that people, in any city you go and get this. Why did you want to look into the idea of a sustainable tourist bus?
So, the bus market is actually quite crowded in the majority of cities, and our company, Tootbus, decided we want to differentiate ourselves from our competitors. And one of the first things that we noticed on entering the market is there was absolutely zero acknowledgement of the need for a sustainable bus or any application of sustainability EVs in the marketplace. So when we founded Tootbus, one of the principal pillars of our organisation is sustainability, and we have set ourselves the very high objective of being completely zero carbon footprint by 2030. And we've commenced since 2021. We started by changing our internal combustion buses to HVO, which is biofuel, basically made from waste oil. So that was the first thing we did. The second thing we did is we started retrofitting some of our buses, such as this very bus that we're on. This was an internal combustion bus.
So this was a normal diesel bus?
Yep. It's I believe a DAF Plaxton. And what we did with that bus is we sent it to a UK company called Magtech, who are our chosen supplier for all of our retrofits. So they took out this bus was the very first prototype that they did a couple of years ago, and this was the first electric sightseeing tourist bus in London.
Wow.
And we currently have 3 on the road, and out of all of the 5 tourist bus operators here in London, we're the only one operating, currently 3, soon to be 4, and by the summer we'll have 6.
Well, there you go. There's another Tootbus there. Just by chance we planted one there. It's one of the things that we've all looked at first, right? So EVs, people know about it. If you're from any major city in the UK, where mainly this podcast listened to, or even in Europe, you'll see electric buses. So what was the big deal about making a tourist bus electric? Because eventually, I suppose, this would have happened anyway.
Here in London, supposedly by 2030, every single bus, be it tourist or be it public service on the road, will have to be an EV. The thing is, they don't actually there's not a single producer of buses that actually makes an EV open-top bus.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, and true, right? So if you are going to buy a brand new EV bus, open-top EV bus, you have to buy a closed-top bus
And take the top off.
and cut the roof.
No, that's ridiculous.
No,
That
I'm
is-
100% serious. There isn't a single fabricator, producer, to the best
So
of
these
my
are
life.
specially made, aren't they, to be tourist buses?
This is an old bus.
Yeah.
I would imagine this bus is a minimum of 17 or 18 years.
Right.
So what we are doing by retrofitting is we're upcycling. So not only are we being sustainable, rather than throwing a bus away, buying a new EV bus,
Yeah.
which would probably cost about 600 grand, and then you have to pay for the conversion, we're taking our older buses and taking the engines out. Magtech are putting in a drivetrain, the batteries, and away we go. We're also doing it in this country, which means we've got less miles to travel, because up until Magtech doing that, we had to go to Spain to do it. But of course, going to Spain means more miles, blah, 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 blah. So, we honestly believe sustainability is the way to go. Our average customer, our punter on the street who buys the ticket, does he care? Possibly.
Yeah. I think most people, I've been the gormless tourist in many a country. You just go, oh, follow that, jump on it.
Yeah.
We don't think about it. And you do say on the side, there's the word says low emission bus or whatever. Do you think realistically people notice this, or it's a reason to buy it? Or do you think it's just, once they get on it, they're like, oh, I assume you have some sort of tour guide, do you, that tells them things?
We do. We have pavement sales staff and customer service staff who do explain our USP over our competitors. However, our competitors are jumping on the bandwagon now. Golden Tours and Big Bus have both got their orders in, again for retrofits, but not with the company that I have. So no to the average Joe public. However, we have noticed massively at a B2B, business to business, particularly from our B2B central office in France, some of the larger corporations, TUI, Musement, Eurostar, they will only sell sustainable products. So yes, from those big companies, it does make a difference, and they choose us because of our sustainable credentials. But our sustainable credentials aren't only just in having electric vehicles. It's not just HVO, as I explained before. There's a whole lot more to it than that. We are now possibly the first open-top bus company in the world that has now installed a solar panel system on the roof of our garage. So we are generating 100% clean energy.
That is the thing that everyone talks about, because you've brought up a really good point here, because we're as green as the power we put in these things, right? And a lot of that power is still generated
By fossil fuels.
So even though you've got a battery-operated vehicle, where's the energy?
Yeah.
First of all, tell the viewers and listeners let's paint a picture, because some people will be listening to this rather than watching it. What sort of garage is it? Like a normal bus garage we could imagine, with a big roof and then batteries? How does it all work?
So our bus garage is down in Wandsworth, on the Wandsworth roundabout, and it's originally a tram shed, and it's one of the oldest depots in London, dates back well over 120 years. So when we started looking at our electrification project and our long-term sustainability project, we were looking for suppliers and collaborators. We came across a company called VEV, V-E-V, and we chose them to work with them on our journey to, net carbon. So part of it was we were looking at installing the chargers in the garage, obviously.
Yeah.
But we had to fit this infrastructure into a really old garage that is not fully electrified. And one of my dreams had always been, look at the space I've got on the roof. Look at the surface you've got.
Oh, the surface area, right, yeah.
The surface area. And they said, you know what, your dream might be possible. They did this big study, and we had to apply for planning permission from Wandsworth, which was granted last Friday. Right. And we are, in the next 2 weeks, commencing the install project, and we will be able to power 66,000 kilometres a year from our 100% clean self-generated.
What are you doing at present in terms of mileage?
A lot more than that.
Right.
So that's
there's a percentage you'll be able to...
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So by our calculations, the 66,000 kilometres a year will fully power 2 electric buses. and it will power the depot and the offices fully. So for us, this is a world first.
And it's one of those things that people talk
about. The
press
release hasn't even come out yet.
Well, there you go. We've got it on the podcast first. But the wider point about this is one of the things that people have really had a problem with, which is how do you incentivize low carbon transport? And one of it is, yes, people buy EVs, but it's still people buying cars. And the other is try and make it so that there's mass transport, more buses, more other ways, whether it's electric bikes or things like that. The Tootbus is owned by the French government, RATP, correct?
Yes, we are part of RATP Dev,
Yeah.
which has one shareholder, which is the French government, but we are run as a private organisation.
Understood.
From Paris. RATP Dev, it's part of their goal. I could give you some information on our company carbon policy. We are way ahead. My colleagues here in London, you probably know that RATP Dev has a number of garages in London.
Yep.
And we do run RATP Dev UK, London Transit. So we do have a lot of public service.
That's what I'm getting into, that there is an aim to try and decarbonise mass transport.
Yep.
As opposed to posh people in EVs.
Exactly. And if I'm not mistaken, there are numbers like, I think it's well over 50% of the London bus fleet now is either hybrid or fully EV. And our sister company here in London, they have well over 50% of their fleet. Well over.
When tourists get on it, and obviously they're really here to see London, and why not? That's a great thing. Do you think anyone starts to talk about these wider things? Because there is another thing about tourism now being more sustainable. So there are companies who are operating, I tried to book something.
Travel.
Absolutely. They all go, right, do you want to offset your miles? Fine. Do you want to go with a sustainable transport person? Fine. Let's be honest, it's a good business. Tourist business is, without it, loads of parts of the world would be suffering. So do you think this model could be taken elsewhere to try and make, the most obvious thing in tourism
100%.
a more obvious for people to go,
100%.
oh, actually, we're doing something?
100%. If you look at the other bus companies that have global presence, such as City Sightseeing and Big Bus and us, we, for example, our whole fleet in Brussels, fully EV. Our fleet in Paris is a mix of natural gas, HVO and mainly EV. Certain of our comp sets in certain competitors, in certain locations only have EVs, but not here in the UK. There are destinations where EVs are the only vehicles permitted.
It'll probably be the way to go, yeah. And the other thing about this is, I suppose this is a big difference, is you have a set route, don't you? So you can charge it in the depot, it does the route and comes back. It's not like trying to get to Birmingham or
You've
or
also
Scotland.
got to understand, even though you're driving around London all day, there's more than enough charge in an electric bus. The sort of maximum speed that we will go a day is
it's
maybe
probably about 6 miles an hour, isn't it?
It's about between 9 and 12 is our sort of maximum speed a day. But, we're on this electric bus now. It's silent.
Yeah.
There's no smell.
No.
It's smoother. But that depends on the driver, right? Even a bad driver can make an electric vehicle bumpy.
In essence, when you look at where we're going, and we're talking about this, the idea of kind of people changing is a tricky one because we're so used to a way.
Yep.
And the biggest barrier is affordability.
Correct.
So, you don't have to go into the full, but are you the same price as if I got onto a diesel? Are you cheaper?
I'm actually cheaper.
Right.
We're a couple of price points below some of our competitors and slightly above others.
Right.
But that's our sweet spot. As I said to you previously, it's those B2B clients, the big companies, the online travel agents, for them it's a requirement. And we're lucky that those customers know they're coming on a sustainable green bus. The punter on the street, as we said, not necessarily interested at this point.
No, but as they start to see it,
It will come. But going back to your point about, cost, this business and any London open-top tour bus company hasn't made any money since the pandemic. We got massively hit in the pandemic. We started our sustainability drive as the pandemic was hitting. So our recovery period, we were well into it already, and we're paying more. So my HVO on the biofuel buses is 10 pence a litre more expensive than regular diesel.
So why are you accepting that cost?
Because of the pillars. Sometimes you've got to bite the bullet. Sometimes you've got to go out there and be the first one to do it. 3 years ago, our competitors wouldn't have even considered electric buses in London. Now they've got orders and they're backlogged with the suppliers because the suppliers can't knock them out quick enough because of the lists and the pre-purchases. We're lucky. We did it before, 6 this year, another 6 next year. We'll be the first in London to have a fully EV fleet, without a doubt.
You've got Tootbus in, is it Bath as well, is that right?
I have Tootbus down in Bath. Down in Bath, we run we have 2 tours in Bath. We have the City Tour and the Skyline Tour. And we also have a public service route in Bath where we run the air decker from Bath to Bristol Airport.
Oh, so an actual route just for the public to use. Right,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
Where do you see this other side of it that you're doing, which is the retrofit, which I want to explore in a minute now, because this is a very important part of, you said at the beginning, if I didn't do this, would you get rid of the bus? Now, most people have seen old buses end up in other parts of the world, or they get chopped to bits, or whatever. Are you specifically going after this retrofit market then? Is that your business model?
It's our business model because what I'm doing is the Tootbus fleet is quite old and we're retiring some of that fleet.
Right.
And when we say retiring, it will be going for scrap because the buses are now, some of them are over 25 years old. Okay. You look at a service bus, that service bus in front of you, after 7 years, that service bus is retired.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So, as you mentioned earlier on, I mentioned earlier on, our ATP Dev, we have a London operation. So what I'm doing is I am taking buses off my sister company.
Right, so these are the red buses people would have
Red
ridden.
buses that are going round, and they've got tops on. So I am taking some of those tops off, taking the engines out, and retrofitting them. So that bus that was 12 years old might have done another 4 or 5 years and then scrap. I'm now bringing it back, and by the time it comes back, it looks like a brand new bus.
And how much longer can you keep it on the road?
I think they've got a good 10 to 15 years shelf life.
So you're sort of doubling the lifespan of this.
And I think that is, to me, that's what makes the difference. Also, I've got a team of proper engineers, and our proper engineers are now becoming electrical engineers, but if something breaks, my guys can fix it.
Yeah, that's the thing I was going to say, because you see a bus fall apart and then there's a big truck comes and the mechanics come. This one, if the battery goes, what happens then?
If the battery goes, we got a problem. But we have spare batteries, and we have a truck that can bring batteries out, that can do that sort of thing.
So you're having to retrain people in a new skill as well?
We might want to say, but the people on the bus are actually, some of our drivers have to be additionally trained on an electric bus.
Yeah.
You can only drive a bus as a public service driver once you've had training on that bus type.
Right.
So within Tootbus, we've got 4 bus types and the EVs, so we train our drivers on everything so they can drive everything. Obviously, this bus is slightly different to drive because there's so much more technology involved.
Yeah.
Did you know with an electric bus, the office can monitor the telematics on how the driver is driving, the acceleration, the braking. We can get an alert if the driver is driving too fast, braking too fast.
Dear, here we go. This is where they're being watched now, Big Brother.
Big Brother scenario. But again, this improves safety.
Yeah.
Safety is paramount. Any bus operations, public, tourist, safety comes first. Safety of your customers, safety of your staff. And, these buses are safe. You
said that your plan is to have your whole fleet. So at present, how many vehicles have you got across the whole Tootbus fleet?
In all European destinations?
In the UK?
In the UK, I think at the moment I have about 82 buses.
82, so of which 4 are electric fully?
Fully electric.
Yeah.
2 more coming this year.
Yeah.
a further 6 coming next year, and then we need to speed up to get there
Right.
by 2030.
And the others, how many of them are just straightforward diesel, or are they a mix of these kind of, like, as you said, biofuels and other things?
No, ours are purely biofuel. We do not have
Yeah.
standard diesel in our depot, just so that the listeners can understand.
Yeah.
You don't have to do anything to use biofuel.
Right.
All you need to do is buy the biofuel. So it's exactly the same diesel combustion engine.
So you don't have to put a filter in or anything. I thought it was. Wow.
Stick it straight in.
Right.
So it's such a simple change to
Yeah.
make, but it's a costly change. If it's 10 pence more per litre, and we generally use, let's say, £60,000 worth of fuel a month,
Yeah. Makes a big difference. Yeah.
but it's worth it.
Yeah.
Because we only have one chance at this, right? And that's our belief.
You're very passionate about this, and I know you came from a hotel background,
Yeah.
right? So you know about the whole tourist and the customer thing.
Yeah.
Where do you think all of this is going? Because a lot of people will be listening going, this is great, it's a tourist bus. It's a kind of nice thing. It's a little symbolism of London, but it isn't the way to get a person that lives in a tower block across town, right? Because we haven't got that. Or they live in another part of the country where there's not even any bus services. So we've got to get to that. But do you believe by changing, because it's one of the most important things, I suppose, is a perception over reality, right? So the reality is we have very few electric buses,
Yep.
but perception, if you see them, you start thinking, oh, there's a change. Same with kind of solar panels on people's
Yep.
houses, all of that. So as someone who's been in the tourist and kind of hospitality industry, is it a sector that could actually, I don't know, wave the flag for kind of what could happen?
100%. And I think the more tourism, we've talked, you and I briefly spoke about over-tourism earlier on. There's so many of these issues that are happening in the world, and I think a lot of it is down to education. And it starts with education. As people become more aware of sustainability, of over-tourism, of EVs, of alternative fuels. EVs might not be the only thing.
No, absolutely.
Hydrogen, hydrogen sounds great. The trouble with hydrogen is how do you store it? And so many things. But going back to the tourism, it's education. If I look at destinations such as the Maldives, go back 20 years, who went to the Maldives? 20 years. Do you go to Maldives in mass tourism? No, that's quite niche tourism.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
Cost. Yes, it's luxurious, but it's in general sustainable. You're on an island where nothing is there. You have to bring everything in, but you have to bring it in sustainably. You have to plant your vegetables there. There's so many different areas that bit by bit, but it needs to be supported by everyone. Not just governments, it needs to be supported by tourism authorities. It needs to be part of the destination's message. Look at certain destinations nowadays, ecological tourism. Look at Goa, look at parts of Kerala, for example. You can look at the Canary Islands, for example, this massive thing about over-tourism at the moment. But there are some very sustainable parts of the Canary Islands, but again, the press isn't choosing to talk about that. So destinations are making small steps. I think it lies with governments, destinations, and business in general. This isn't necessarily the best financial decision that one can make currently,
Yes.
but it is a decision we had to make and we wanted to make. We don't get any advantage, tax or...
That's what I was going to say, whether
none.
you'll
Big
get
fat
anything
zero.
from the TfL or whatever saying, hey, you're not polluting, here's
Big
a little...
fat zero.
Right, so you're doing this because you feel it's the right thing to do and you're being trailblazers to do it.
Yeah.
But actually, from a business point of view, it's bonkers.
People think we're mad
Hell,
because, as I
The
say...
costs are not going down, they're going
No,
up.
they're going up.
Right.
When my boss asks me to cut costs, and I
Yeah.
say to him, the only thing I've got left to cut
Yeah.
is go back to diesel fuel. And he says, don't cut costs.
No, exactly.
Because, that 10 pence per litre is a big
No, it's
thing.
huge, it's huge. But I mean, look, if we can get clear, here we are, we're passing Leicester Square now,
Yeah.
right? We're in the heart of London, and Soho, they've tried to block that off, they're trying to change things. If we can get to a place where actually we can walk around these sort of parts now, I remember when you could drive in Leicester
Yeah,
Square,
me
right?
too.
So it's all completely different. I feel that there is a thing that's shifting, and I think what you're doing here is brilliant. So thank you so much for letting us on the Tootbus.
Thank you very
It didn't
much.
give us a toot though, did it?
We can do that in a minute.
We'll do that in a minute. If you've enjoyed this podcast, let us know what you think about sustainable transport, particularly when it comes to tourism. Remember to subscribe to the podcast, and the Tootbus is coming to the Big Zero show.
We are indeed.
We're looking forward to
bringing
it.
our latest retrofit directly from Magtech
Brilliant.
to the show.
Well, look, if you're coming to the show, you'll be able to see it there. Get your tickets now. Register, go to bigzeroshow.com, and you'll be able to get your free entry there. I'll see you Gavin there. We'll have a great session there. I do believe sustainable transport is something that we should all talk about. So catch you on the podcast next time.
You've just heard the Net Hero podcast from futurenetzero.com. Join us as we help you find ways to cut your carbon footprint as we head towards net zero. Subscribe and follow us on social media. futurenetzero.com. Better business, better planet.